I realize that as First Lady, you can bring so much attention and marshal so many resources to really help on whatever issue that you're focused on. So I have always taken that responsibility very seriously. The early part of my life was focused on sort of reaching those traditional markers of success. I focused on getting the right degrees, going to the right schools. So by the time I was in my mid-20s and working at a firm, I had everything that I was told I should want, but I could still feel that there was something missing. I wanted to be in a position to help folks from neighborhoods like mine, especially young people, have the opportunities that I had. The inauguration was one of the coldest Januaries that I've spent here in Washington, D.C. It was freezing. I really remember what it felt like to walk out the steps of the Capitol and stand there with Barack as he took the Oval Office and look out at what felt like endless amounts of people standing as far as the eye could see from every race, age, background you could imagine, who had come from every corner of the country just to witness this historic moment. It was probably one of the most profoundly moving experiences that I've ever had. And to have our girls there with us, those two little bitty girls standing on that stage, it's a moment I'll never forget. This role, it's a real gift because it brings with it this big, bright spotlight. And that's why I've worked hard to choose work on issues that I care deeply about, that I feel really defines me or that I'm connected with, that will really make a difference in people's lives. I've had the opportunity to travel the world, and everywhere I go, I meet these amazing young women, and they impress me with how bright and how hungry they are, no matter what their circumstances are. They'd risk their lives for an education, and they have so much promise that we can't afford to waste. I see myself in these girls, so I want to let girls learn to be part of my life's work for decades to come. Because for me, this issue is personal. I've hoped that I've used my big spotlight to move the needle on a whole range of issues, but I feel honored and blessed to have served this role for my country.
Many people call me fearless, and I'm always a little bit embarrassed because nobody's really fearless. It's about how you manage fear. When I was about 5 years old in Tehran, I started as my sport, as my hobby, horseback riding. I was put on a big horse, you know, like 15, 16 hands, and I was little. I could barely get my legs around the horse. And when I fell off, my fabulous instructor, who was an ex-cavalry officer in the Persian army, would literally, by the scruff of my neck, pick me up and slap me back on. So there was no time to be afraid. There was no time to give in to fear. I was 20 years old when the revolution hit my country. And I saw gradually people who I'd grown up knowing and respecting executed, imprisoned. My own uncle died in prison. It was a moment of fear. For me personally, it was my open door to my adulthood and to my professional life.
Let me try to give you some detail that may put a human face on some of what's going on. The real story of what's happening here is still to be told. Christiane, Amanpour, CNN, Sarajevo.
When I landed after the first Gulf War in the former Yugoslavia, that to me was my toughest experience. Being in a city under siege was terrifying. There was nowhere for us to escape as journalists. There was no hotel that was out of the danger zone. The entire city was the danger zone, and it was ringed by the aggressors on the hills, and we were down. So we were with the civilians. We were amongst those who were targeted. I had the confidence, I think, because of the way I was brought up, because I didn't thump my chest as some kind of I am woman, hear me roar, because I did the work, because I had a very good relationship with my male colleagues, and because I proved that I could do it, because I did it. The best lesson I was taught was never give in to your fears, never give up. It was my colonel teacher who would grab me by the scruff of my neck and put me back on that horse every time I was thrown off.
Some people that would say, oh yeah, she's a Hollywood insider. I am still not inside Hollywood. There are people that get to walk in the front door. Pretty white girls go in the front door. Strong white girls have to maybe try to come in the back door. But then some of us of color, we just have to walk through the wall. People always ask me, is it getting better for women? Is it getting better for black women? You know what? You're supposed to be happy for all progress, but we have to get real. I will tell you something, Hollywood remains the least equitable employer in this country. In this country. And it's just hilarious how they say, oh, Hollywood's so liberal. We are the last bastion of classism and racism when it comes to putting into practice of seeing all people as potential partners. But yes, there has been progress because women won't go away. We insist on progress by our very nature. I'm still waiting for my takeoff point. I have not done what I came here to do.
Being part of the launch of Nelson Mandela's HIV/AIDS Foundation 46664, I was invited to be one of the artists taking part in the concert. And Mandela took everybody to Robben Island, where he'd been incarcerated for 18 years. He stood in front of his former prison cell, and he told everyone that there was a genocide taking place in this country. These are his words. A genocide was taking place in the form of HIV and AIDS, and the main victims were women and children. And here's Mandela calling to the world for some kind of support. And I just took it very personally. I don't know, it was like lights went on and I said, I just have to do this. I can't walk away from this. I couldn't have walked away from it. All the chapters and the phases that I've been going through in my life, becoming an artist, raising a family, trying to do what all women have to do very often, which is juggle and multitask. I always knew I'm going to do something, But it was HIV because it was right there in front of me and I felt it recognized me. Medical doctors, they understand about the symptoms and the nature of the virus. So what's lacking often are just other people that can kind of interpret this complex thing, and let's just put it across in a more simplified way that you can actually identify with. So if I'm talking about HIV, I will talk about being a mother, because I can't imagine being a mother and being HIV positive and not having any access to treatment, thinking that I'm going to die and my baby's going to die, and so that starts a conversation or a thought process, personalizing it. Every single person that I've met on any project visit, they've never left me, because the experience of this moment of meeting someone, I can never forget them. I can never forget that moment. I carry these experiences and these people with me. And I feel like in the moment when I'm campaigning or advocating, they're with me. They're with me. I'm talking for them, it's not about me.
I was the youngest of 5 girls growing up. I was really small for my age. My sisters always took care of me. Venus was always protecting me and always been there to really look after me.
The sisters have combined to win 6 of the past 9 Grand Slam titles. Their influence and inspiration is far-reaching.
When Venus and I came on the scene, it was just like something different, and you don't see black people in the locker room, and I didn't know that we would influence a whole nation and culture and world to start playing and just bring a whole new look that extended outside of color, that just extended all boundaries. And I just want to go out there and win Grand Slams and win tournaments and be #1 in the world.
Stunning. The best possible medicine for Serena Williams. A 19th Grand Slam title.
I feel like I'm being recognized for all the hard work that I've done. I feel like it was not only a win for me, but for all women in general. When you're breaking down barriers, there's going to be moments where you're not going to be comfortable. It takes a team and it takes a village, especially as women, to stand together and do things together is a good story that needs to be told.
The predominant reaction to the women's movement was ridicule. It took us a long time to be taken seriously enough to be opposed. When it came to assignments as a freelance writer, I was assigned things about fashion and food and makeup and babies, or the low point of my life, textured stockings. When I delivered the articles to my editor at the Sunday Times magazine, he generally gave me a choice, like either I could go to a hotel room with him in the afternoon or mail his letters on the way out. Needless to say, I mailed the letters, but I just assumed you had to put up with this. I don't think I understood the need for a movement until I went to cover an abortion hearing. I had had an abortion when I first graduated from college and had never told anyone.
Women are not going to sit quietly any longer. You are murdering us.
And I listened to women testify about all that they had to go through, the injury, the danger, the infection, the sexual humiliation to get an illegal abortion. And I began to understand that my experience was not just mine, but an almost universal female experience. And that meant that only if you got together with other women was it going to be affected in any way. What we are talking about is a revolution and not a reform. Wherever we went, there would be these huge crowds, and people would stay for hours afterwards and talk and form groups. Because women were so relieved to hear someone describing what actually happened to them, that it was just like wildfire. It grew into an idea for a magazine. We were terrified. We were going to embarrass the movement by creating something that wasn't successful, but it was supposed to be on the newsstands for a couple of months, and it was just a little over a week, and it sold out. It just walked off the newsstands. We were shocked. It was heady and exciting and naive, because we thought these injustices are so great, surely if we just explain them to people, they will want to fix them. One great tribute to the success of the women's movement is the degree of the backlash against it.
Among the multitude of causes in this cause-ridden age, one that has not, to me at least, made its case is women's lib.
In my heart, I think the only alternative to being a feminist is being a masochist. Now, the majority of people in this country know that if there is inequality, it's wrong, it's unjust, that we're all human beings, and the point is our individual talents. That's a huge change, huge, huge change.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. The Columbia days were my first time being in that kind of system. I didn't know what to do exactly. They just never had a girl like me who could play and kind of was like a little tomboy with braids and loved Wu-Tang and Biggie Smalls and Chopin would come in with these ideas. I'd have these different guy producers. They wrote me off from the beginning. They didn't think I could play. They didn't think I could write. They definitely didn't think I could produce. That's the one that bothered me the most. When I did, then they'd be like, wow, she really can actually. To this day, people are blown when they're like, you produced that record? I'm like, well, yeah. It's like a mystery that a woman can be a producer, which is a lot of the reason why I'm so controlling about my sound and my style and my music and bringing my own self to it. I'm definitely a feminist. I think that women are phenomenal. I definitely want to give women strength through my songs, through my actions, and we are so capable and we give life to those that are around us. You don't have to be always icicle and steel, being able to go through downs and come back up. And so we really do owe it to ourselves to believe in ourselves, because who else?
Being called ambitious, which is what I was called, made me seem kind of conniving and threatening and that I had planned this all. Never, ever occurred to me that I could be Secretary of State. I would be in a meeting and I would think, well, I'd like to say that, and then I thought, well, that's really stupid, I can't say that. And then some man would say it, and everybody would think it was completely brilliant, and I'd be so mad at myself for not saying it. I think I probably exude a lot more confidence than I have, but I clearly got more comfortable. When my name came up to be Secretary of State, there were those who said that a woman cannot be Secretary of State, that other countries would not deal with a woman. The Arab ambassadors at the UN said, we have dealt with Ambassador Albright and never had any problems, so this is not an issue. I had more problems with the men in our own government. And not because they were all male chauvinist pigs, but because, in fact, they had seen me go through this endlessly long rise of being a carpool mother or a friend of their wife's, or on school boards or the perfect staffer. And all of a sudden, I'm Secretary of State, and they wonder why they weren't.
To Secretary Christopher, I want to express my gratitude. I can only hope that my heels can fill your shoes.
Women are very lucky in many ways because our life does come in segments. Some of it broken up by the time to have children or have a career. And so I think that women can do everything. They just can't do it all at the same time.
There was a woman, Karen Nussbaum. She began to organize office workers, women who worked in banks, hospitals, insurance companies, and she would tell me stories about what it was like for them. I thought, I want to make a movie about this, and it started off as a serious movie. But then I met Lily Tomlin. I saw her do her show, and I fell in love with her. Lily and I often reminisce about the morning that Dolly showed up with her long nails. It was so funny watching her try to type. She's saying, I think I've got the song. And then using her nails as a washboard, she started singing 9 to 5. And Lily and I just looked at each other. We had goose flesh all over our bodies. And it became the anthem of the movement of women office workers.
Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living.
It was, I think, the first and maybe the only time that a movie grew out of an organized movement and then undergirded it to lift it up even more. And that felt really good. Curious. Curious is really important. It's much more important to be interested than to be interesting. I stay interested. I feel like every day I learn things. My second marriage had failed. My self-confidence was rock bottom. I saw no future in my life. I was planning to move to New Mexico and become a full-time environmental activist. And then I met Ted Turner. Ted helped me heal, and he taught me to laugh. When I turned 60, I thought, oh, goodness. If I divide my life into chunks of 30 years, this is the beginning of my third act. And that's what made me decide to write my memoir so I could figure out where I'd been so I'd know where to go. And by the time I finished, I was a different person. And so I discovered that I could find joy again in acting, which I didn't think I ever would again.
You felt in class as if all eyes were on you, and that if you didn't perform well, you would be failing not only for yourself, but for all women. I attribute part of my success in law school to my daughter. She was 14 months old when I started. I mean, every day at 4 o'clock, my time at the law school was over, and it was children's time. Each was a respite from the other. When my daughter went to sleep, I was happy to go back to the books. The first case I argued here was Frontiero v. Richardson. She is a lieutenant in the Air Force. She gets no housing allowance for being a married officer, and her husband doesn't have access to the base medical and dental facilities. It was an afternoon argument. I didn't eat lunch because I was afraid I wouldn't retain it. When I got to the podium, I was at first terribly nervous, and then looked up at the justices and thought to myself, these are the most important judges in the United States, and they have to listen to me. They have no place to go. People asked me what it felt like coming out to the Rose Garden with the president. And the first thing that came into my head, well, it felt a little bit like being a bride.
Over the course of a lifetime, in her pioneering work in behalf of the women of this country, she has compiled a truly historic record of achievement.
Well, it is a picture now. It's some difference. People certainly know that women are present on the court. And we are all over the bench, and we are certainly here to stay.
When I was 9 years old, on Mother's Day, we went to Wrigley Field in LA. And as I was sitting there, it dawned on me that girls don't play baseball, only boys. And it was not a happy day for me at all. So I really want to try to play tennis. Daddy and Mommy, can we just, please, I gotta go get my racket. So we went to Brown Sporting Goods, and I read every tennis book, all 3 of them that I could find in the library. So I go out to the public park for my first instruction. And at the end of the day, I said to my mom, Mom, I found out what I'm going to do with my life. This is it. In 1968 was the first year that we actually got prize money. It didn't even dawn on me that we would get less. Rod Laver won Wimbledon. He got 2,000 pounds in 1968, and I got 750 pounds. And I went, oh. You had the men starting to talk about an association or a union. And I went to them and I said, you're going to include the women, right? And they said, absolutely not. We don't want you. Get lost, basically. And that is the birth of women's professional tennis. And our goal was we wanted any girl born in the world, if she is good enough, there's a place for her to play and make a living. A lot of people don't think we're going to make it. I had guys tell me that probably nobody would ever pay even a dime to watch us play.
There's no way a woman can play tennis with a good man tennis player. This is a battle of the sexes.
Bobby Riggs, he was a former #1 player. He'd won the Triple Crown at Wimbledon. We're only in our 3rd year of women's professional tennis. We are in a very tenuous position. I started thinking about society and women and what this might mean. I knew I had to play. I knew I had to win. I drop shotted, I lobbed, I floated one, I went to net. I hit the ball as softly as I could, so he had to generate all the power. And I was going to run him into the ground. It wasn't about tennis. It was about history. It was about social change. When you oppress people, either by gender, by race, by sexual orientation here, when you do that and the doors become ajar, they will fly open and they will come, and they have.
Opportunity never knocks at an opportune moment, but you have to recognize it and embrace it and try it. And so I often tell young women in particular, take a chance. You will never regret taking a chance. I had a 10-year plan, and so I went right to law school. I joined a law firm. I got married to literally the boy next door. I had a daughter right on schedule. I remember sitting in my beautiful office on the 79th floor of the Sears Tower in Chicago and gazing out at Lake Michigan with sailboats, and I just broke down in tears. And I realized that I had been very busy fulfilling a plan I had made many years earlier, and that I had never really done that gut check to say, you know, what's going to make you happy? And as a result, I wasn't really very good at it. I was trying to do it all myself, and I was priding myself on being Wonder Woman, and as a single mom, it's especially hard. After a couple of years of literally hanging on by my fingertips, I realized that that was totally unrealistic and that I needed help, and so I could not have raised my daughter on my own without my parents, who were very involved. We had a wonderful caregiver. You need that support system around you, and many women don't have it, and we need to make sure that we do help women who are in the situation of trying to raise their children on their own. On the top of the resume, it said, terrific, smart, amazing young woman, does not want to be at a law firm, not even sure she wants to practice law. And I thought, oh, that reminds me of how I felt. Her name was Michelle Robinson, engaged to Barack Obama at the time. I interviewed her and was bowled over by her, just really impressed with her. In the course of my recruiting her, she invited me to have dinner with her fiance and talk it through, because he had some real reservations about her joining city government. I thought they were very unusual. I thought they were both old before their years, absolutely committed to public service, but not quite sure what path life would take them. They were absolutely in love, and you could see the mutual respect and the sense of making this decision together as a unit. It's not a spectator sport. You better have a pretty tough skin. On the other hand, I can't think of a greater privilege than representing our country and advocating for the American people. And I see my role really as being a part of an extraordinary team of people that the president has surrounded himself with, who are there to make sure that as he makes important decisions, he makes them having the advantage of the best and most diverse range of perspectives possible. Of course I'm a feminist. I think feminism is really about making sure that women can thrive and where gender is not the issue that defines whether or not you're going to be successful. Making sure that we have workplace flexibility and an environment where women can thrive in the workplace is not just a women's issue. It's a family issue, it's a societal issue, and it's what's going to make America continue to be globally competitive if we get it right.
I was obsessed with Billie Holiday from 5 years old. You know, there was this library across the street from our house, and I remember seeing her CD, and it was pink. And I was like, ooh, pink CD. And I saw this beautiful lady with these beautiful flowers in her hair. And so I took it home and I listened to it. And from then on, I fell in love with her voice and who she is. So I learned at a young age that I always loved different things. Growing up, I was the typical little sister, so everything I would see Chloe do, I would love to do myself. So she would sing and I would sing. And so from then on, I found out that, wow, I actually do really have a love for singing, and this is something that I want to explore, and this is one of my passions. To believe in my ideas and trust my ideas, because I'm capable of having great ideas and capable of, you know, stating something wonderful and bringing something beautiful into the world. Especially when I write, you know, I have to trust, like, this is a good song. Sometimes the creative process goes in and out of liking and not liking, so I've had to learn that a few times. I want to be just like these other beautiful women who inspire me in ways that they are unafraid and they are powerful and they seem so gracious in just being themselves.
Human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights once and for all.
If the 19th century was about ending slavery and the 20th century was about ending totalitarianism, the 21st century is about ending the pervasive discrimination and degradation of women and fulfilling their full rights. I get a little annoyed when people denigrate the 60s and kind of characterize it as drug, sex, and rock and roll. It laid the groundwork for the success of our civil rights movement, for the continuing equality of women. It was about human empowerment and freedom.
Although we weren't able to shatter that highest, hardest glass ceiling this time, thanks to you, it's got about 18 million cracks in it.
There's a great hunger for women to look for examples, role models, mentors, even someone all the way across the ocean. You know, the recent Nobel Prize winner from Yemen, this incredibly brave woman, you know, had a picture of me on her mantle. And I cannot even tell you how honored I was that she would look to me to try to give her courage when she is on the front lines of bullets and clubs. I want to see more of the reality of women's lives changed in however much time I've got left on the earth, so that I don't continue to cringe at women denied, you know, the right to be whoever God meant them to be.
I think you're being mean.
I think you're being oversensitive.
I just got off a plane from Ohio. I'm in a postgraduate delirium.
I think you sound like you're in the epilogue to Felicity.
When I started acting in my own stuff, it was very much me thinking like, well, I don't have access to actors now, so I'll just do this temporarily until I have the right girl for this part, until I have the person who I think expresses everything I want to express. And then it just kind of kept on being me. I didn't like being 22 and jobless. I really hated it. In fact, I've made a whole show about how much I hated it. I didn't know if I would get away with some of the sexual content. I didn't know what was allowed. I just kind of went in thinking everything was allowed. I've definitely been surprised at times by how scandalized people have been by certain things. When someone asks, are the girls good role models? I'm like, are the guys on Entourage good role models? Is Larry David a good role model? And I love all of those people, and I'm psyched about what they do, and I resent being forced into a position of having to represent all of female sexuality.
It's a bummer, because like she ruined it, but it's not.
How could she ruin the beautiful abortion that you threw?
Hannah.
People will often say, well, would you let your daughter watch the show? I'm like, first, I don't have a daughter, I have a dog. But I want to have a daughter, and I would like my daughter to see what I think is a realistic depiction of what a version of her life could be. And I also think that, not to go to bat for my own characters, but I think they're good role models and that they're trying really hard. I realized after having been in Hollywood for a little while that I was in this incredible position to actually make change. I never felt angry about sort of the criticism that was directed at the show because I knew it was an important conversation, and I was totally fine to kind of take one for the team if it was pushing that conversation forward. I'm proud of having navigated all of the exciting things that have happened to me without changing who I am or having a full-scale mental collapse. I'm proud of having been able to make work that women tell me has affected them and improved their relationships with themselves.
Women are so risk averse. So you fail, so what? Unless it kills you literally, then you're probably okay and you can do it again, better, next time. It was weird growing up in such an oppressive regime where you couldn't speak your mind, couldn't do what you wanted to do. To come to America as a woman athlete, girls were encouraged to be cheerleaders, not to be the athlete themselves. It was very sexist. That was a shock. ERA, Equal Rights Amendment. What do you mean? Women had to fight for all these things. The land of the free? How is this necessary? There's no doubt that I didn't get a fair shake from the press. I don't know how much of it is coming from a communist country, how much of it is being a woman, how much of it is being gay. The reporter wrote the good versus the ugly, me against Chris Evert. You can imagine who was the good, who was the ugly. And as a woman, you're held to a different standard. You can't cuss, you can't complain. Age is so much a matter of your attitude. Of course, you have to make adjustments, but you don't have to give up. I know I'm one of the greatest of all time, and that's good enough for me.
Any woman now actually is a feminist, actually. They don't realize it because they're living in a world that feminism has, to a certain extent, created for them, which is very exciting because it's entitled. That's what I love about them. They're entitled. I grew up in the sort of British equivalent of Coney Island, which was a sort of working class seaside sort of place. I think I was very lucky in that both of my parents were feminists. I do remember suddenly understanding how the world was stacked against me as a girl. I was just so horrified and shocked coming from a family saying, no, you can be anything, you can do anything. And then, boom, no, you can't. You be this, and you're not allowed to be anything else.
Do you find that your physical attributes, which people always go on about, hinder you?
Serious actresses can't have big bosoms. Is that what you mean?
I think the 60s and 70s were not a good time for women. It should have been liberating, but actually it wasn't. It squeezed women. It was a great role. She was this incredibly, wonderfully flawed character, ambitious, self-centered, difficult, egotistical.
Mr. Greenleaf, someone is dead. Now, he may not have been part of your inner circle of friends, but that doesn't mean he didn't have rights and someone caved his head in. Now, I'm in charge of this case and I will decide who gets released and when, all right?
At the time, incredibly groundbreaking. You had not seen that woman on television before. You very rarely saw a single woman being the lead character in anything at all, let alone a police drama. I always used to say, put your energy into changing roles for women in life, because as night follows day, as women's roles change in real life, roles will change for women on the screen. You're banging your head against a brick wall, and then a little bit of cement falls away. And I feel that the wall is just about to fall. It hasn't quite fallen. But yes, I think these are very exciting times for women.
Dancers have a tendency to concentrate on their excellence and being extraordinary. I'm talking about being whoever you are, truthfully and honestly, and hitting the mark. Hitting the mark. There's no other way to do it. There was a wall of honor. Alicia Alonso, Freddie Franklin, Danilova, Carmen de Lavalade, all these wonderful ballet dancers. There they were on my wall. At the time I was growing up in Philadelphia, Black people couldn't study classical ballet, and my mother got me in places that you couldn't get into. Seeing Alvin Ailey dance, wading in the water, going like, oh my God. The man rippled across the stage, let alone the muscles, but rippled across the stage. And it brought to me my history. There were people of color on stage I could identify with live and in color, literally. And excellence. That was what was key. It was excellent.
In 1971, I made a dance called Cry, dedicated to all Black women everywhere.
It was a birthday present to his mother. He couldn't afford to buy her anything. What a gift. Fortunately, Alvin did not tell me I was carrying the weight of the Black woman on my shoulders when I started doing this monumental dance. I was worried about getting through the dance.
High flying bird, fly on.
3 sections, very difficult to do. Hard to breathe, but also hard emotionally. Alvin choreographed Cry in about 8 days. And I went out on that stage and did that dance for the first time, not knowing what stamina I would need, how I would have to hold my breath. To this day, any woman that does Cry, you got an entire company standing in the wings cheering them on to get through that last section.
Head down, 1. There you go.
I was running 2 companies at the same time. I got 30 dancers looking at me this way. I got 12 dancers over this way. We opened maybe 6 days later. Plus, we were in huge debt. Thank God for the people that were there. Everybody supported me. If you step into the world of the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, you will see how the world should really be functioning. People from all over the world, from every neighborhood, everywhere, working together to learn to express themselves, to show each other their humanity.
You do a lot of research. You put all that research aside, and you wake up with a moment's inspiration. My parents immigrated from China. My mother, she always said, in your generation, you should do whatever you feel like doing. Senior year at Yale, someone saw a poster for a competition for the Vietnam Memorial. We said, well, what a great way to end the class. We'll all design Vietnam memorials for the class, which is what I did. And I saw the site having researched for about 6 weeks to 8 weeks. And the next morning, I thought, let's cut open the earth and open it up. That's all it was.
Some of the highest priced architecture firms in the country did enter this competition, and they all lost.
I thought that the most insulting and demeaning memorial to our Vietnam experience that was possible. One needs no artistic education to see this memorial design for what it is, a black scar.
You know, I will never know how much my age, my gender, my race played into the controversy. We'll never know. I knew I was right. It wasn't just about the aesthetics. It was about, I knew that if that project was built, it would help people. I cannot answer why I knew that. I'd never known anyone who died. All I knew is if we could face death, face it honestly, only then can we get over it.
There's so many women in the world who feel totally powerless. And so if you play a character who embraces power, as a woman, it's effective. And it's very compelling. And I think it's, for some people, quite frightening.
Oh, this is the way you do it, huh? Showing up at my appointment?
What am I supposed to do? You won't answer my calls, you change your number. I mean, I'm not gonna be ignored, Dan.
I think it was amazing timing for that movie to come out. It really became part of our culture, and no one really could have predicted that. Because I think there was a lot of anger. There's a lot of suppressed anger between the sexes. And that movie it was like a volcano. That was the beginning of parts that I've played where the women have been called evil because they are strong or because they disrupt the harmony. I have never considered those women evil. They are women who are basically acting like men.
One of the reasons why I never remarried, despite a quite bewildering range of offers, was the determination never again to be ordered around. I must therefore ask you to adopt a less marital tone of voice.
They wanted me for the marquise. I loved her because she was smart. She would not allow herself to be treated like most women. She trained herself to be able to not show anything, because that was power, not to give in. I think in some ways it's still considered aberrant biology for a woman to be strong and a leader.
If you were a man, I'd kick the living dog shit out of you.
If you were a man, I'd be worried. And I think even though some people would say she's evil and she's such a bitch, well, you know, they've always said that about women who are powerful. I think you just have to be brave because you can't develop unless you take a risk. It's very healthy to be scared. I think you should do things that scare you on a regular basis.
If my friends were to describe me as a child, they would say I was stubborn, really weird, and always wanted to be the center of the party, for sure. My parents are from India. They had an arranged marriage, came to Canada, and I grew up in like a kind of traditional Indian household. I definitely think my parents did raise me differently because I was a girl. And I really don't think it was them trying to limit me, it was just the only thing they knew. Sometimes people think a South Asian female shouldn't have a lot of opinions. So when you start to talk about your feelings, the vibe is kind of like, you're not supposed to have opinions about these things, so we can't talk about it. A lot of people ask, how do you know you were depressed? I literally felt like I was going through the motions of a day, not actually alive. That was actually a really big breaking point in my life. The first time was actually in the midst of me being in depression, where I just kind of cracked and was like, I need to speak to someone. I was like, what is this? What's a YouTube? I'm so confused. Is this a video on the internet and like people are watching and commenting? And I thought, if I could make other people laugh, that might self-medicate myself and I can make myself laugh. What up everyone, it's your girl, Superwoman. Real name Lilly Singh, and you may or may not know me, but either way right now that is absolutely irrelevant because I am exactly like you. I have so many dreams in life and so many things that I want to do that it both excites me and stresses me out. There was no one that looked like me making videos. There was no South Asian female making videos, and I was like, well, I want to be the person to change that. Now, speaking of dreams and passions, one of my passions is to spread positivity, and that's what I hope to do in these few minutes to you, my friend. And I'm gonna tell you why you can do whatever you want to do in life. And you might be wondering, why would you listen to me? And my response is, why not? It's only 3 minutes, and I did my eyeliner just for you. Talking to my fans about depression was something I never thought I would have done when I started making videos. Growing up, I couldn't talk to anyone about my depression. I couldn't muster up the courage to talk about it with my friends or my family. And I don't want other people to be in that situation. On my recent world tour, one parent was in tears. She came up to me and she just collapsed into tears and she said in my ear, the next person in line is my daughter. I just want to let you know that last week, true story, I literally pulled her off the train tracks as she was trying to end her life, and the only person she could talk about that helped her was you and your videos. We are in a generation of literally changing the world. I think a combination of millennials and social media working together so that if I have a victory or if someone who is a gay rights activist has a victory or someone against sexism has a victory, because of social media, it's everyone's victory. My happy place is when my actions, my heart, and my mind all match. It's when I'm doing what I love to do, believing what I'm doing, and making people laugh. That's all I want to do. I know what it feels like not to laugh. I want to make people laugh. And by people, I also mean myself.
If a woman said, wait a minute, we got to stop here, or I don't like this sketch here, or whatever, she would be a bitch. If a man did it, if Jackie Gleason did it, he would be Jackie. I called the CBS people. I said, you know, that clause that says that I can do a variety show if I want to. And there was this pause. And they said, you can't host a variety show. It's not a woman's game. It's Gleason, it's Sid Caesar, Dean Martin. It's all these guys. We've got a great pilot for you to do called Here's Agnes. I could just say, here's Agnes. No, plus, I don't want to do the same character week after week. I said, variety is my love. So they had to put it on the air. The CBS executives had a big board with cards on it about the future shows and what was going to happen in February or March or what was going on, And in our time slot, come February, there was a question mark, which meant they had no faith. They had no faith in us. So I remember saying to Vicki and Harvey, let's not think about ratings. Let's not think about anything except going out there and having fun. And we just put aside everything else and put blinders on, went out, and let it fly. In the iconic Gone with the Wind sketch, it was hard for me not to laugh coming down the stairs.
Starlet, I love you. That gown is gorgeous.
Thank you. I saw it in the window and I just couldn't resist it.
That's one of the longest laughs we ever got.
I never thought I would be a dancer. I enjoyed moving, but that's not something I ever thought of as a career. Ballet found me when I was about 13 years old, and I was approached by a teacher who told me that I had something. I looked like a performer, I looked like a dancer. I'd never seen a ballet in my life, so it was all very foreign to me and something I couldn't even fathom doing. So I took my first ballet class at a Boys and Girls Club on a basketball court, and everything just happened so rapidly after that. My teacher said to me that you have the potential to be in a professional company, but if this is what you want to do, your life has to be ballet for the next 4 years. I'm a woman now, and I don't look like a little girl, and I don't think that we should look like little girls. I was the only Black woman in the company for 11 years. And I am preparing for my first principal role with the creation of the ballet The Firebird. Being the first Black woman to be put in this role in a major company, it's the start of it all, and it's definitely one of the big highlights. Being one of the few Black women in the ballet world is something that I do think about, maybe not every day, but when I speak to a young girl who has tears in her eyes and says, you know, thank you for doing what you're doing, that's when I'm most proud.
I've always been curious about different things. I love technology, and I think that helped my creativity in music because it's all about, you know, the beats per minute and the melodies, and I've just been inspired by everything, and it helped create who I am today. My sister and I, we always loved to sing together, but when things really started to pick up was when we posted covers online, and we just did it for fun. We did what we loved, and we were really grateful at the response from everybody. Trusting who I am and going for it and just believing in myself. And I have a really, really great support system, and my sister, we go through a lot of similar things. So we're each other's therapist and we tell each other everything. So yeah, I'm so lucky to have her. You can go through so many different obstacles, but it's all about your outlook, and I just hope my sister and I can express that through our music, because you never know. One day someone could listen to our song and come up with the invention for, you know, a time machine. I just want to inspire and ignite that fire.